I'd like to call to order the August 5th, 2024 Committee of the Whole regular board meeting of the State College Area School District Board of Directors. If everyone could please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome to everyone joining us in person this evening and those viewing remotely. The board held an executive session prior to this meeting regarding real estate. Board members with an agenda before you, are there any changes? Okay. Then I'd like to now call on the board secretary for a roll call of board members.
Dr. Bader.
Here.
Dr. Anderson. Ms. Brandt.
Here.
Dr. Buck.
Here.
Dr. Krovakor.
Here.
Dr. Demo.
Here.
Ms. Huff.
Yeah, here.
Colby.
Here.
Dr. Miller.
Here.
Okay. So now we can move on to communications and the superintendent update. Mr. Johnson?
Thank you, Amy. The current issue of State College Magazine has an article by our communications team on the new uniform positive behavioral interventions and supports program STAR in our elementary schools. It's also posted on the district website. For those who don't know, STAR stands for Show Kindness, Take Responsibility, Act Safely, and Ready to Learn. I'd like to commend our district PBIS leadership team for all of its impressive work so far in launching this change, as well as strengthening the middle school PBIS programs and supporting the high school's award-winning program. Students, faculty, and staff will benefit from the team's commitment to improving school climates, and I'm so proud that our district so strongly believes in PBIS.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Being it's the summer, we don't have a student update to share at this time. Next up, we have legislative. Jackie, do you have anything to share with us?
I don't have anything to share. I'm just going to defer to our presentation on the state budget later. Thank you.
Great. Center Council Region of Governments Liaison, Gretchen or Peter?
Peter? I have a couple things.
Okay.
Okay, so the first communication is that Trick or Treat Night will be on Thursday, October 31st from 6 to 8 p.m. But if there is inclement weather, then it will be on Friday, November 1st. But it's different this year. It would be then from 5 to 7 because that's the Friday night before a football game, so they're trying to make it a little bit earlier. But that's only if there is inclement weather. So people might get confused, but oh well, I think they'll still give out candy. People give out candy. And then I also wanted to share that there will be a grand opening of the Millbrook Marsh Nature Center Spring Creek Education Building and Diane Curley Welcome Pavilion, and that will be in October. And obviously the district uses Millbrook Marsh a lot with field trips and outdoor education, so this is pretty exciting for the district. When the exact date is known, I will be sure to share that. And I also wanted to share that I don't think that I've been sharing much of this because I thought it was a little complicated to try to explain, but because it's been sort of stuck for a long time, I wanted to go ahead and share it tonight, which is that at the Council of Governments, there has been a committee formed for the governance of the parks at CRPR. And I have been on that committee for over a year now. We're a bit at a standstill, but I just wanted to explain what this is because it does relate to SCASD. And it's, like I said, a little stuck right now. So basically, there are appointed members on the Parks Authority. One from Ferguson, one from Patton, one from the Borough, one from Half Moon, and one from Harris, and one from SCASD. The elected boards appoint those people to the Parks Authority, except SCASD. SCASD, the borough appoints the member, and the borough appointed me, and so that's why I am on the Parks Authority. Obviously, and this is there's a reason that SCASD it has representation and voting power on that authority. And the reason is because there is a mutualistic relationship between SCASD and CRPR. CRPR uses a lot of facilities in SCASD, both indoor and outdoor. The parking lot for Welch Pool is owned by the school district, but leased out to CRPR, I think for $1 a year. Fogelman Fields belong to SCASD. So there's a lot of interaction between the two. And right now, the governance of the Parks Authority and how it works and how it sets in the COG and what it does and what it doesn't do, this is what has been being discussed for quite some time now on this committee. And this committee existed before I got on it. So we will see, but right now it's kind of up in the air. There's not really been any decisions about whether the authority should still exist, whether it shouldn't, all sorts of things. And because there's representation from SCASD to that authority, I just wanted to kind of give everybody a heads up that that is happening. But again, right now, nothing has been decided. There has just been conversation after conversation after conversation. And this is, by the way, why I've missed so many of the SPPA working group meetings, because they fall on the same Wednesday. But anyway, just thought I'd share that. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer. Call me, have coffee with me, email me, whatever. And I just thought that I should go ahead and share that. That's it.
Great. Okay, thanks. We now have time for public comment. Each individual will be allotted up to 3 minutes for items related to board business that are not on the consent or action items portion of the agenda this evening. For those items, public comment will be held just prior to voting on that item. Please state, do we have anyone present who'd like to make a public comment? We have a small audience this evening. Anyone online? Okay, well then I think we're set with public comment then. We'll move on to the board report section. We're going to start with Culture, Climate, and Learning Committee, and beginning with Athletics self-assessment report. Chris Weekland and Jeannie Andrews are with us this evening for this overview. Looks like Jonathan Bucher is going to join us as well.
All right, good evening. Since athletics programming is an integral part of our educational process and experience in our district for many students, the district conducted an assessment of athletics by collecting information from an assessment survey that we provided to all head athletic coaches. So today I asked Jeannie Andrews and Chris Weekland to come here today to talk a little bit more in detail about that.
Great. Thank you, Jonathan. As Jonathan mentioned, with athletics playing such a major role in student experiences and activities, as well as the educational environment, the idea of a periodic self-assessment of athletics can help us identify what's going well and where there may be opportunities for improvement, especially in the area of fairness and equity. Our athletics head coaches for all sports were tasked with completing a survey. That survey had 37 questions on it, and within those questions, there were sub-questions as well. Chris will go into some detail on some examples from those findings, but just to give you a general sense, they included things like marketing and communications. They included protective equipment, uniforms, practice facilities, access to certain locker rooms, what were the accoutrements to everything. The findings of this survey revealed that overall the district has very strong support in issues of fairness and equity among the sports that were surveyed. And I should also say it provided an opportunity to identify some improvement opportunities as well, and areas where we want to make sure we have continued care to make sure that we don't veer off track. You have a grid that was provided to you where we took the findings and provided a framework that we're going to use to make sure we're monitoring and tracking these efforts. And Chris will go into a little bit of detail on that.
Okay, thank you, Jeannie. As mentioned, I'm going to highlight a couple of the items. I'm not going to go through the entire report point by point, but I do have 5 items I'm going to highlight. One being the protective athletic equipment and other athletic supplies. Obviously, our coaches responded to this, and they are having acute awareness of the sustainability of equipment and supplies within their program, and recognize a need for a very thoughtful approach to reconditioning and replacement of equipment, as we all do. Uniform selection and quantities, as well as quality, consistency, is something that we highlighted, and we continue to survey our coaches. They're really integral, serve an integral part in this whole process when it comes time to getting new uniforms. Equipment storage areas and movement equipment. Again, we meet with physical plant and our custodial crew to make sure that everything is in line with what they're able to do and our equipment and our facilities, and make sure they know and our coaches know what is our grounds crew and our physical plant's responsibilities for there. New facility between the high school north campus or above the high school north campus by community field is going to really be beneficial to us when it comes time to making sure that we keep track of our equipment. It's in a secure location, climate controlled location, and we can make sure we maximize any equipment we have and stored in a safe environment. We also recognize that, and shared with the coaches, that if they experience any type of concerns or situation with equipment, they are to consult myself and our athletic department about that. We really do believe that our coaches are really important partners in this process. Locker rooms, practice facilities, competition facilities. Obviously, there's a lot of unique individual sports with 32 different sports. Some of them come with unique challenges when it comes to the setup and facilities, whether it be indoor, outdoor, relationship to a locker room, scoreboards, bathrooms. So we recognize the challenges that are faced with our coaches as well as our athletic department and school district. It appears that any of these differences are considered thoroughly and are based on those nuances. For example, cross-country, the availability of locker rooms and bathrooms at our cross-country facility at outside of Park Forest Middle School at Circleville Park, it would be unique compared to girls field hockey at Memorial Field. The ensure of safety and equity in facilities. We continue to review our facilities and make sure that they are safe to standards associated with each sport. Make sure that our supplemental facility needs are equitable. For example, even to the point of whiteboards in one locker room compared to another locker room. We want to make sure that they're consistent from one middle school to the other, one gender to the other. And teams that share spaces, we do a lot of communication and collaboration with the coaches that share space to make sure that there's equitable use of those spaces. We have a predetermined inclement weather schedule that has been formulated with the coaches' help, so that they know the entire season. If they're out in this week and there's inclement weather, they know where their facility is indoors, and that is on a rotational schedule that the coaches were part of assembling as well. The nature of sports publicity, marketing, media services, and I think that's something that is a big challenge for us with our coaches and our community when it comes to social media, because we rely on other outside agencies to support us, and some of them are more equipped to support us than others, or have greater interest to support some programs over others. But it does highlight a really important need that we need to take on, and that's working more closely with our communications department to help make sure we provide the resources for our teams, our coaches, our programs, and get us working more closely together to better support them in that area. Game and practice time scheduling. There's a lot of uniqueness as well, depending if it's an event right after school or something later in the evening. But we do follow the PIAA standards for all of those, and the coaches are well aware of what those standards are. There are obviously hurdles with transportation, availability of facilities, availability of opponents, availability of officials that we need to consider when doing that, which can cause a shift in one sport over another. We can continue to make our coaches aware of all the PIAA prescribed requirements for number of competitions and times and practices and such as well. Again, our coaches are important partners in developing the practice schedules as well as competition schedules. Athletic training services, really happy to report that there's been a strong response from our coaches, and they have a great appreciation for Mount Indian Physician Group and our athletic trainers and what they provide and the support they provide our athletic program. So that was very favorable and good to see there. Availability of medical personnel is something we want to look at, especially as we talk about remote sites like Boys and Girls Golf at Center Hills. It's not our location. What are some services that we can make sure we have in place for them as far as having, for example, we purchased 2 portable AEDs last year to make sure that coaches have that on hand for their competitions there, and whether or not athletic trainers are going to be on site. And then what Center Hills has available as well as far as medical care and assistance. Other additional focus areas, as new sports come on, as you know, we added a couple new sports last year. We want to continue to monitor those and make sure that they get all the information as well as needs are met for each sport. Our head coaches that we met with, it's important that they have used their school district email account, use Parent Square, and our school district websites that disseminate all the information that they need to. And we want to continue to monitor our enrollment and registration numbers to make sure we have appropriate support, resources, and care available for each team. So, some next steps, as we review the survey, there's a couple action steps, and I think you were shared on that document there. We want to make sure that we address those and report out to our superintendent and assistant superintendent throughout those processes. We want to make sure our department takes the lead, ensuring that all coaches are aware of all the necessary requirements and information for them, especially our new coaches and their onboarding. And it would be helpful to do a follow-up survey in another year or 2 as well. We don't want this to be a one-and-done type of situation here. As part of our continued efforts, as you may know, we hold coaches meeting before each season. That's for both all of our paid coaches, volunteer coaches as well. We review and reinforce a lot of what we shared here, as well as other things. At our most recent coaches meeting, Ms. Tanya Black was present there from the Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Office and did some professional development with our coaches as well. Our IT team was present to help review changes and updates from the IT department, especially when it comes to Parent Square. And our athletic trainers are present to review and discuss any safety, injury management, and overall care of our athletes. We're appreciative of the coaches survey and the opportunities it has for us to reflect, learn, grow through this process. So we're excited with what this next step and these action steps are going to bring us.
And just in closing, as Chris said, this isn't viewed as a one and done. So our hope is we can use this framework and kind of use it as a barometer on how we're doing. Resurvey as needed and do the follow-ups and reporting. The one thing that became clear is that everyone in administration really wants to ensure that our coaching staff, our athletic teams, and the individual athletes are really functioning in an environment of equity and fairness in all respects. That came through loud and clear.
That's good to hear. Questions? Yeah. Carlene?
Yes, so thank you for that presentation. So this is a framework, but it's also included things I hope that we've been doing, and this is just kind of acknowledging it, because I remember being on the committee after that football player died on the field. We talked about the AEDs, and I thought it was kind of ensuring that we've had them accessible. So.
Absolutely. I appreciate you bringing that up. Many of these things we are currently doing have done. It just highlights the need to make sure that we are reinforcing those, and everyone, especially new coaches that come in, are onboarded and recognize where their AEDs are, how to access them, and specifically with that.
Good, thank you. I was hoping that was the case, that we are keeping our athletes safe. I noticed you kind of passed over number 4, which is about staffing capacity, and that's another thing that we talked about, that we've always had trouble recruiting coaches. And so how do you tend to solve this problem?
Well, that's a great question. I think we're going to talk a little bit more about some initiatives that we within our athletic department are pursuing later in the board meeting here with a Positive Coaching Alliance. We're looking at ways that we can best support our coaches. We need to be able to recruit, retain, reward our coaches, and make sure that this environment is a safe, positive environment for them, so that coaches are more inclined to stay with us and be involved with our program. So, yeah, I think there's some things that we've looked at internally within our athletic department, with Lauren and myself, and working with Randy and Jonathan and company to make sure we have some good supportive resources around supporting our coaches.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, Carleen. Other questions? Gretchen?
Yeah, I had one question and one comment. So I'll ask my question first. So under transportation, meals, snacks, and protocols for overnight travel, it says across all sports. And I'm just wondering, what does all sports mean? Because does this mean sports that SCASD helps pay for? Or does this mean like it includes rowing and hockey and, all sports? So anyway, I was just wondering what across all sports, what does that mean?
So, thank you, Gretchen. We surveyed all head coaches, so head coaches of sports under Chris's regime.
PIAA.
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 Okay.
Correct.
That was our focus.
Okay. I mean, we could include that if that's what it is. Just because if there's somebody coming into the district and they may not know that, and then they're looking, they go, well, that doesn't happen with hockey or whatever. So, anyway, but thank you. And then my comment is on page 3, under equality in locker rooms and locker room facilities and equipment. The responsible party is athletics department, physical plant, and finance and operations officer. And at least going through my head, I can't think of any females that would be in any of those categories for being responsible for this equality that is on page 3. And so I just thought I'd mention it because sometimes the people who are affected by it, if there's not any representation amongst the people who are the responsible parties, they may not see it. So I just thought that I would highlight that because it came to my mind as I read that. Anyway, that's all. Thank you.
Thanks. Debbie?
Thanks. I just wanted to highlight, I know you don't have the answer to this, but I wanted to just, I guess, say thank you for including on page 4, focus area, ensure compensation is in line with established standards and it's equitable across all sports and genders. And so I know that it's sort of been a goal to look at extra duty, extra pay for our coaches and our advisors for clubs and stuff. I know that's coming. And I see you have a December 2024 target date for doing that. So I just look forward to the results of that. So thanks.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you.
So next we're going to move on to elementary dean additions. Danielle Yoder is going to join us to provide a proposal regarding the addition of 2 elementary dean positions.
Good evening. There, hang on. Vanessa. My apologies, and I will share this presentation afterwards. I know you received the memo regarding the information to discuss the addition of 2 deans. Do you want to unplug? Mm-mm. Okay. It's probably because it's PowerPoint.
It should still be allowing the accessory itself to connect. One more time. Do you have another port?
I can try this one, but it didn't work the first time. This one should work.
Yeah,
But it didn't.
give it a second. Yeah, it's trying. Sorry, everybody. Go back to this. One more time with this, and then we're going to have to go with the USB-C.
Oh, we got it. Thank you. Thank you. So anyway, I talked at CCL when we met last week to kind of go over, this is really for information, but we felt it was important to talk during the CCL portion just to kind of review the understanding of repurposing positions and how that works. So Meredith is here tonight for the next portion of the next with CCL to discuss an SEL at Easterly Parkway. But she would, her school would benefit from this, so I felt it was important in case you have questions for direct with an administrator to have her up here too. One of the things I'm most excited about is, as you do know, is we did finally get approval for the 2024 to 2026-27 school comprehensive plan. And last year we worked with the new mission, which is to build a foundation for lifelong success and well-being for every student through caring, responsive education. And when we look at how to impact the greater good of elementary, I can tell you that students are at the heart and soul of everything I think about every day. And for that reason, when we're discussing needs within the building or different needs with regards to what do we need to support all kids, but really so that every kid is impacted or every child, this mission, when I was reviewing it, really aligns with the addition of 2 additional elementary deans. So really the priority focus that I'd like to talk about is to support the district's mission. And after we took time this year to review positive feedback on the dean positions, I've heard from principals, teachers, and support staff. We're interested in using 2 allotted classroom teacher contracts to add 2 additional elementary deans. And I will share in the presentation how that works, just to clear up any confusion that there could be. A little bit of a background, and I don't want to read all of this. This was in the memo, was really last year when we came to you and asked to add 2 elementary deans. We looked at the 2 largest buildings. At the time, it was Mount Nittany Elementary and Park Forest Elementary to give them some consistency. Both of those buildings sit between 425 to 450 students on a yearly basis. That was approved outside of the classroom teacher allotment as an additional add in the 2023-24. As you know, we secured those 2 deans. One has now moved into an elementary principal position, and we recently posted to rehire for the Mount Nittany dean. The deans, the hope was that they could support all 8 schools, but what we found almost instantaneously is the Mount Nittany and Park Forest needed their dean every day for the different diverse needs within their schools, how they were being used, how they were supporting students, teachers, really everybody. We found it more and more difficult to provide the support to the other schools. So with the purpose of adding 2 deans with 2 allotted classroom positions. Each year when we work through a budget, Randy comes to me and we talk about how many contracts, and we really work through Administrative Guidelines 126G, which was linked into the memo, and it really talks about the recommended guidelines. I have no intent, and nor do the principals, we've talked thoroughly around this, to increase classrooms outside of the recommended guidelines. The additional deans would come from positions that are in the budget, but not necessarily needed for additional classrooms. So what that means is year to year, if you have an allotment, but the class size doesn't warrant those, we do not provide extra teachers just to hand them out. We really try to look at the equities across the schools. Are we maintaining, holding them till sometimes, as you know, in late August, we end up having to add a teacher or two due to a bubble of an influx or an increase. The additional deans would come from the positions that were sitting there. I've talked to Randy, I've met with Joe on these that we believe we will have. Currently, with the additional deans, we still have the ability to add classes that are currently sitting on the bubble. So as a reminder, that AR 126, kindergarten through second grade is a recommendation of 21 to 24 students, and third through fifth grade is a recommendation of 24 to 26. Our current projected sizes as of today, and we check these every day, and every day the principals check them to make sure that they are securing the proper amount of teachers and what do we need to do. We do have one kindergarten numbers currently at 23. Uniquely, that school has nine of the kindergarten students enrolled that will be full-time autistic classrooms. So that 23 is 23, but 9 of those students would be pulled, bringing those sections to about 2021. But they do, of course, hold spots in the general ed classroom. All other K-2s are under 22, and the majority of our schools right now, we have been able to keep it between 17 and 20 since the COVID pandemic. In grades 3 through 5, we do have 2 schools that have at least one class of 26, and we are looking at those, and as I said, looking at the budget to ensure if they increase that we will place that ad. All other schools are at 25 or below, with the majority between 20 and 24. So as we said, current schools with deans are Mount Nittany and Park Forest. Our proposal are Easterly Parkway, that is why Meredith is here, and Radio Park Elementary. Easterly Parkway, we share, it is sitting at about 40% poverty, 20% or more ESL. When families move into Center Safe or come to us homeless, and as you know, those statistics in Center County have increased within State College, they attend Easterly. That is the home school for those areas. So they have seen the increase in homelessness. And we do have trauma-informed or mental health support there. Last year, over 45 students received trauma-informed coaching. That was individual. There were more students impacted by groups that Easterly did. Radio Park has jumped from typically, I think 5 years ago, sitting at about 350 to currently the highest enrollment count in our district. Now, part of that is due to the inclusive classrooms. There are now 3 autistic support classrooms, and one was added additionally this year due to the needs coming in. As I said, we have 9 primary students that will go into the new class. We're working, as you know, as CJ shared last time, Tanya Black, Erica Frankenberg, Meredith has helped to take the lead. We have been working on DEIB at the elementary to try to help people look at their schools and what we can do to really being focused on our marginalized students and what kinds of things are we noticing. And we have a lot of data that we'll be sharing with the elementary principal group when we present to them. We'll be presenting as an elementary team and then continuing to study that as part of our professional development for the principals. But this data was pulled from last year. And I was hesitant to share this, but as you can see, these are the top 11 students that had repeated discipline incidents this year. And as you can see, this was pulled of all 8 elementary schools. Repeated referrals all happened at Easterly and Radio Park. So it is another, we did not know this until June, but this is just another instance where in the past, where we had deans, the deans have been able to jump in, get positive behavior support plans in a little bit faster, be monitoring and be working. I can't prove that that is why other schools haven't landed on here, but this is just to help the case of why we're looking at those 2 schools. These are some of the duties and responsibilities. Again, I'm not going to read this. Some of that was shared within the memo, but what they do do as part of the dean job. They are there every day. They have substituted. They are in teachers' classrooms. They are out at recess. They are doing a lot of the different duties and responsibilities to help the administrator, but really also to help the whole school. And I thought it was important. Kara is logged in tonight, Kara Trewick, who will be our principal at Easterly Parkway, but I had reached out to the deans. And what I think is most important is they went and we shared in a handbook how the deans were utilized this year, just in different aspects of the school. And really, in every single area of our elementary schools, the dean plays a role to impact children. They are part of the positive behavior implementation support. They are part of our multi-tiered system of support. In what ways can they impact down to the individual? They did groups this year. They supported teachers and, again, supported paras with that. They provided individual support to students, both pull out and push in when in need. We hope sometimes that we have enough staff to support, but we found in many days that we really needed those for students in crisis to be able to help keep the classrooms regulated in the 2 schools that had them. Helped with whole class resets, restorative circles, behavioral reteaching, which we're really focusing on this year with PBIS. They helped collaboration with school personnel, including the school psychs, helping them gather data, the school counselors with groups, the secretaries with communications, custodians working with them to making sure that we were supporting their needs within the building. Goes on to really show you, worked with the cafeteria staff this year in those 2 buildings to help address reteaching, breakfast flow. We added different lines, if you remember, at Park Forest Elementary because with the opportunities of free breakfast brought in double the amount of children, so they were able to be there. Title I teachers, worked with them, worked with the special education teachers to support scheduling. The deans provided paraprofessional training, put some examples there with different things that they really were able to do that our principals just can't get to on a daily basis to support their schools. And finally, they are also key in communicating with our families through not only calling when something went wrong, but to initiate positive calls to celebrate students, to follow up. If the principal is working with one and doesn't have time, we really use them throughout the day through phone calls and follow-up. So we have found them to be vital. I do have letters of support from teachers in those buildings. I have those. I did not share those as part of the presentation, but that is really our reason behind the interest of adding deans. I do know that a lot of elementary schools are adding assistant principals. I do not think that we are not interested in doing that, but we do think by adding 2 additional, all 8 elementaries can be positively impacted, and that is the principal goals group to make sure that there are 4 priority schools, but we will find a way to support all 8 buildings, and that team has agreed to do that.
Thanks. Sure, Anne, you want to start?
You've made such a compelling case that I want to ask for the parents of Coral Street, Ferguson, Grayswood, and Spring Creek, what's the process, or if the students in those schools need access to the deans? So you've made like a very compelling case, but can you talk a little bit about the process for when those schools also need that kind of level of support, and how are we going to pull them away from one school to another, which seems like a hard
And I don't have the answers to that. Historically, the 4 schools where we're putting deans have the largest needs, and 3 of the 4 are the largest. However, we have shared that if there is an absence of a principal, can a principal or dean go over there and better support? And the principals are like, we're going to go over and support them this year. If we are finding in cases that there are students that we need more support, this year we worked closely with Michelle Hammersley, who is focused on elementary special education, to get more support and really acting as a team. We brought the deans in last year to get ideas, especially for some of the recess. With 4, I think we can greater impact, and we have even talked about, do we get them into those buildings at least one day so that the teacher can focus, and that's something that the principals have all supported.
Carly?
Yes. Yes, yeah, you did present this in CCL, and one of the questions that I had then, and I still have now, is when will we know when you're going to be able to get these 2 deans, or enrollment is going to increase? Like, what is the cutoff?
So we interviewed in July for elementary deans. We posted it as district-wide. We did have a top candidate that we moved forward. We did have 3 very solid candidates that we have told the other 2. We have been open throughout our communication that right now we moved another person forward, but if the opportunity presents itself, they are being considered. So I contact those 2 individuals weekly and let them know I'm still looking at numbers. As of today, when we look at numbers, if I added the deans this week, if our numbers they have been pretty steady, I would like to be able to, by the end of this week, knowing that I've worked with Mr. Brown, knowing that we still have those contracts for those bubbles that would not go over the allotment within the budget. So I would like to do it by the end of this week, but that I'm going to work with Mr. Brown, Mr. Johnson before we do that. The principals wanted me to do it last week, but we really want to be cognizant of our teachers and make sure that our class sizes, that we fall within the budget. But in looking at that, hopefully by the end of this week, we would be able to make those offers.
Okay. My other question is that when we had hired the 2 deans, that was supposed to be for the 8 schools, but we realized that the 2, Mount Nittany and Park Forest, had this immediate need. And so now we're getting 2 more deans, and we're thinking now with 4 deans, we'll be able to have covered all 8 schools. But with the 2 deans, we realized that that was impossible. So my question is, are you going to come next year and say we need 2 more deans or 4 more deans so we could have 1 in each school?
It's funny. One of the teacher letters of support from the one school said, "I think that you should put them at every school." And I was like, "Oh, I can't put that out to everybody." And I'm sure that every school would want, when we really look at needs, even when we looked at some of that disaggregated data, some of the just more at risk and numbers. I am very hopeful, and I have told CJ all along. I told him last year I wanted 4, but was happy to have 2. I do believe with 4 that we can strategically be a little bit more proactive, and then even next year continue to use those. So I don't see us coming forward to ask for more. We do talk all the time about differences and different students coming to us, but I just believe that if we target these schools and the numbers that are at these schools, but the complexity at Easterly, we can utilize the 4 to really support the 8.
Yeah, I would reiterate that as well. We need to put our resources where our most students are, our biggest populations, and not water down our resources, and while simultaneously being within our budget. Yes, it'd be nice to fulfill all the needs that we have in the school district, but obviously with a finite budget, we're not able to do that. So we got to put our resources where the most need is. So.
Gretchen?
I have a quick question, Peter, because I know you had your hand raised too. My quick question is, so are you kind of envisioning that if there's 4 deans and there's 8 schools that, I mean, yes, the 4 have been assigned, to the schools that you've mentioned, but the 4 that don't have deans assigned, will they be assigned to one of the deans, like as a, everybody's responsible for 2, even though primarily one will need it the most?
I can speak to that a little bit. The conversation among the principal team has been about how can we support, and that support might be us, right? It might make more sense if a dean is running small groups and I get a call from a colleague that says, we could really use some support, we've got something going on, then I'm the one who moves, right? Sometimes that makes the most sense. And so we also have been thinking about a rotation schedule. Daniel alluded to that a little bit, about how do we make sure that we realize that in one day a week or one day every 2 weeks, you're not going to embed in the culture the same way that you would if you were there every day. And so as much as I would love to say that, would be an effective plan, we know it's not. However, we do want kids to start becoming familiar with all of us, right? We are one district. We are 8 individual elementary schools, and we are all working together and trying to collaborate to solve those problems and to address the challenges and support kids. So one of the things that we talked about was, does it make sense sometimes in our own work to make sure that the principal is the one who can move between buildings to help support our colleagues and support students, depending on the way the deans are used. And she talked a little bit about this in her presentation. That might actually be easier in some ways, depending on what those active supervision periods look like, those tier 2 groups that a lot of our deans are running. And so we would be thoughtful about creating a schedule that allows for every building to receive some additional support, whether that's dean support or whether that's an additional principal, to be able to help on a rotational schedule.
So then, the answer to what I asked is no, right?
So it wouldn't be assigned, it would be on a rotation schedule.
But
All of them, to all the schools.
But we have talked about, so this Mount Nittany Dean, if they're going to partner with a school, they would have a partner school.
Yes.
So that
That
they.
was my question.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep, the 4 would each have a partner school.
I see.
And we would try to do that to make sense geographically.
Yes.
Like, it
Right.
might make sense for Ferguson to share with Mount Nittany and Spring Creek with Easterly, and we would be
If I
thoughtful.
understood correctly, so does that mean that it's not necessarily that a dean would float in between, but a principal might even be more likely to float in between than a dean, and each principal then would be assigned 2 schools-ish, and so would the dean?
Possibly have a partner school. The other thing we're working on this year is in instructional. So our principals really want to get into the classrooms. For example, at Spring Creek, like that is Mr. Brigman. He said, I can handle without a dean, but could I get support that I could just spend a day really getting to know my teachers in the classroom and, getting in. So their elementary team has said, yes, we are going to find a way to make sure that there is some sort of rotation there to make sure all the schools are supported.
Okay, I think I understand. Thank you.
Peter?
Yeah, so how will the board understand the impact of these positions?
Well, we're doing a lot this summer, so I don't know that the deans are any one thing, but we have qualitative. We can certainly look at quantitative as far as academic data too. We can look at our universal screeners and see if there's a difference. Some of our comprehensive planning goals. We can compare. We can look at all kinds of things. The thing that I want to be careful of is we are working on so much, like the elementary team is working on exclusion, moving away from exclusionary practices from discipline. And what can we do? So we've done a lot of PD this summer. We still think that we can look at last year's data and compare it. But I guess that's something we can talk about too. So we can provide different data to look, but I don't know that the dean is the thing. That we would ever be able to prove that it was the one exact thing. But we can certainly share data of what our findings.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I can understand if you're changing this thing and that thing, you're not going to be able to say, well, it was definitely this. But I would just be, really curious to see how, what the positive changes are and whether we can, do a direct attribution to one thing or another. I'm not personally super concerned about that, but these kinds of shifts, we want to just make sure that the board is apprised of things end of year. And I know we have this discussion, the next item, on reports and whatnot. And so I just want to be able to think ahead about how this will be included.
And I can share, when I was going through for the new principal at Mount Nittany, the question that was asked multiple times throughout, and even after we announced Mrs. Selensky, was knowing that their dean was moving on to become a principal. That was the question I heard most. Are we getting a dean? Are we still getting a dean? Are you going to rehire for the dean? So their voices were loud throughout the spring once they heard that Mrs. Trewick was going to be a principal, that they wanted to ensure that we were going to have a dean there again because they saw the immediate impact.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Aaron?
So, I have a couple questions. The first one is, what does the org chart look like? What is the chain of command? Who do the deans themselves report to? Is it the principal that they're working with, their primary principal? Is it you? Is Danielle? Is it the administration? Who's kind of overseeing them is really my question.
So they are overseen, the principal would evaluate. They are on the 190-day contract like the teachers, so they fall under a teacher contract, but they are evaluated. Last year we held, although I kind of fell off in January, we were holding meetings with the two deans just to get an idea of what they were doing, making sure that there were consistent practices. This year we would like to have them meet in their own PLCs, but ultimately it is the principal with oversight from me to them.
Okay. That makes sense. So, in thinking about the dean's role, because I know this was a new position last year, and I actually got to see, when I did the tour of Easterly, I got to see, or not Easterly, Mount Nittany. I got the tour of Mount Nittany, and we got to hear from Ms. Treweek, and it was great. My question is, how does the dean's role interact with the counselor? How is it distinct?
One of the things that happened at Mountain, so I can't necessarily share the distinction because it's really what a building needs, right? So they're really focused on student discipline. But this year we found that those deans were supporting one-to-one. When the counselors were trying to do other groups, they were picking up. So the second half of the year, Mr. Feldman came to me and said, are you going to take her and begin to push her out? Because that was, I kept saying to the team, I'm going to get you your deans. They found that when they did their mid-year, they needed her to do almost daily groups. So one of the dean's roles was to be doing daily small groups that were different than what the counselor could provide. So was it behavioral re-regulation? Was it reteaching? Whereas a counselor is really focused on the school counselor basis. They are still doing groups. They're still working on the social emotional, but they're working as a team. They're part of that multi-tiered system of support that is about the whole child and who is best to support this child or this small group of children that have this need. And then they worked as a team with the principal to determine that.
Okay, and I know that Ms. Troik mentioned that she and the other dean,
Mrs. Kabbalah?
Yes, Ms. Kabbalah, they were working on a handbook for the position. I don't know if that was ever completed, but I think from my perspective, and I'll just ask you, it seems like having very clearly defined and laid out roles for those, because it seemed like the position starting out was a bit of figuring out where it fit in. So would you say it's sort of more defined now than it was?
Yeah, so I pulled some of this from the handbook. Okay. I worked with both of them last week. They also collected a ton of data. They fell off a little bit in April and May when things get a little hectic, but they had data to show, did they support more individual, more small groups? I have all of that data as well to show the collection of how they impacted, even the breakdown of male versus females, things like that, because they have that data that they collected to show what they did on a daily basis that we used also to kind of inform our decision.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Debbie?
I just had one question, sort of a what-if scenario for looking towards the future. So if we go this route now, right, using 2 classroom teacher allotments to create the dean positions, and then say next year we have a huge influx of kids, but we don't have more teacher positions necessarily, can the dean position be repurposed back to the classroom teacher if it's decided that that is the greater need?
Yes, the principals have heard that over and over. Have you heard that from me? We have said if there is a big year, we've got to look at all staff and determine needs. So we have different systems, but they absolutely would be considered because they are classroom, that they would, if there is a need for a classroom, that's what we would do.
It's just, I think it's important to know what our limitations are, if
Yes.
any, and to know that we have the flexibility to make the adjustments to address the greatest needs.
Yes.
Correct.
Thanks.
Yeah, Jackie.
So I just want to acknowledge and say that what I'm hearing is a lot of collaboration has been happening across the elementary schools, and I think that's really great, and it's really encouraging to hear it said with such positivity from both of you. So I just want to thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Good luck.
I'm really excited with the team that we have and the work that they've done a lot of work this summer. So thank you.
All right. You've gotten all the questions that I had already asked and covered, and I would just reiterate, I think, having been on the tour that Aaron mentioned, we got to see firsthand some of the impact that the dean had at Mount NEL. And I think as education is changing and we're being continually forced to be the bigger and bigger social safety net for society, we have more things that we have to do for kids. And principals have so many, obviously administrative, but like legal administrative meetings that they have to attend, like IEP meetings and 504 meetings and other things that, you know, they have to meet. And those needs are growing too. We're seeing that special ed is growing. We're seeing other needs growing. And so that paperwork part of the principal's job is going to really eat up a lot of their time. And so I can very much see how important and critical this position is to provide that cohesiveness in a building, that everybody's on the same page, like you mentioned, whether it's from custodians or teachers or counselors or parents, to what's going on. And I just am really excited because I think the more we're learning about restorative practices, we're knowing what a delicate process it is, and it has to be done with fidelity. And I think having somebody who's a hallmark for that, which the dean can be in many cases, to make sure that people are implementing that with really true fidelity is really critical as well. So I'm really happy to see that coming. I'm happy to support it. But as Debbie's question was, which would have been mine, is, you know, how are we going to manage long term? And I guess we'll take that 1 year at a time for now until we figure out, you know, if this is an ongoing need that we anticipate that we're just going to have long term in our most needy buildings. So I appreciate all the work that you put into sharing data.
Thank you.
Yep. So you want to go on to share a little bit about your unique program at Easterly?
I'm going to go grab my note.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't know you had another question, Gretchen.
Well, you just made me think of one thing that hasn't been said that I really think needs to be said, which is that it's also because you all are dealing with the aftermath of the pandemic and the higher disciplinary issues and needs and all-around needs and social safety net that schools have become. But yeah, I mean, nobody knows, of course, how much is from that. But it's clear when I talk to teachers and principals that there's definitely a contribution from the aftermath of what they went through, the students went through. So anyway, just didn't want that to be silent in the room, that obviously this is something that we're still dealing with. So anyway, thanks, Amy.
Yep. All right. Sure. So we're going to talk a little bit about the PBIS program at Easterly Parkway with Ms. Henderson.
Malik, are you online?
I am. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Awesome. But can you see me?
I don't think we can see you.
I don't know that we can see you, but they will give that a shot. I do have your presentation up.
Oh, there he is.
And Malik, you told me to hit play.
Yeah.
When I'm supposed to hit play. I did a presentation in Canva, but I never played one in it. So I will give you guys kind of the floor. They read the memo that I think you were shared on of what you're bringing tonight to go over the cost allocations and what our plans are. But I'll let you guys kick it off.
Awesome.
Yeah. Thank you for having us. We're really excited to talk a little bit about the opportunity that we have and the plan and the collaboration and the things that we've done to think about how to support what all of you know are the unique needs at Easterly Parkway. And once Danielle figures out how to play
Are you
gotcha. I'm ready.
Okay.
Danielle, you're using it in Canva or from the PDF?
I have it in Canva. Would you prefer I don't?
No, go for it. Do it in Canva, but just make sure that you press presenter mode in the bottom right-hand corner rather than play, because I think play might make it a video.
Oh.
Okay.
Nope. Try that button. That looks good. And this is why I repel technology.
Malik, are you good if I just pull it as a PowerPoint? And
What's that?
Okay.
Yeah, that should work. So to echo a lot of what Danielle said, I'm going to share some numbers with you, some things about my first year at Easterly Parkway that, you know, now that I've been here and had an opportunity to observe and see some things, some areas that I really wanted to think about how we could impact and how we could improve at Easterly Parkway. And through lots of conversations, some that I've had with you about the importance of, you know, social emotional learning and some things that we can do to increase a sense of, you know, culture and belonging in our schools. And, you know, Malik is going to talk a little bit about what he does and kind of what we, where this began in terms of our partnership. And then we will kind of talk you through our proposal and what we're thinking for what I hope to be a really exciting opportunity for the kids at Easterly Parkway.
Now, this still says play, but I can go this way. All right. All right, you tell me when to turn, and I'll
All right.
up as soon as they can see it. Okay?
Awesome. So, all right, you can go ahead. So this is just our agenda for today. We're going to go through a little bit about how we got here and what our concerns and thoughts and ideas are, and then we'll talk a little bit about our solution and our approach, and then we'll take questions. Hopefully I can answer any questions that you have. All right, Malik.
Awesome. Yeah, so I will kick it off. My name is Malik. Hey, everybody. Nice to meet you all, for those of you who I haven't met. So first and foremost, I always like to introduce myself by saying that I'm a husband and a father. To me, that is my most important identity. That informs a lot of the work that I do and a lot of work that you're going to hear about in the coming slides. I'm an artist. I've been creating music since I could talk. Started performing when I was 12 years old. And all of this led me to become an education consultant. So I started SEL Hip Hop, which stands for Social and Emotional Learning Through Hip Hop. And what I do is I support schools to create a culture of connection and compassion through play and creativity. And so this manifests itself in a few different ways, and I'll go into more detail about how I'm planning on doing that with Easterly. But I work with educators through trainings and coaching to really uplift play and creative expression as a means to not only effectively but proactively manage large student groups. And to cultivate focus and respect and connection both with and amongst students. And also introduce really creative and unique and restorative practices to guide students who are having difficult moments in the classroom. I support students in building confidence and collaboration skills and self-regulation skills through play and songwriting, music recording and performing. And I do that through workshops, assemblies, and after-school support. We can go to the next slide. And so this kind of, this partnership or this idea came from a one day of programming that we did back in February with Easterly. And so I connected with Meredith to come out and do an assembly and to also do just a day of workshops where I worked with students in their individual classrooms, had teachers there with us. We did songwriting exercises, we did games, and initially we just kind of thought that it was going to be just, a unique day to bring some fun and creativity to the space. But what we ended up getting was much more than that. So can you go 2 slides ahead, please? Yep, and I'll play just a quick video recap of that day so you can kind of see what this work looks like in action and see the impact in real time. So go ahead and hit play there.
Middle of the screen. Oh.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Yep. Please.
Set my body free so I can free my mind. Set my spirit free 2 times. Now we gonna breathe and release the life. Been a heavy sometime. Take a little moment to release sometime. Now is the day that we need sometime. Gonna take a couple moments just to free my mind. Set my body free 1 time. Set my body free so I can free my mind. Set my spirit free 2 times. Now we gonna breathe and release the life. Been a heavy sometime. Take a little moment to release sometime. Now is the day that we need sometime. Gonna take a couple moments just to free my mind. I need to free my mind. Reconnecting to divine. No produce, I'm still alive. Cause my worth is not quantified by my work, and I know this now. Had to fast just to slow down. See your light, your gold all around. Don't sell yourself short, make your ancestors proud.
So next time you are bringing to do something, you really, really want to try it. I want to encourage you to step in there and give it a try, right? And when you're done, I guarantee you're going to be so proud of yourself, all right?
Awesome. So I'll pass it over to Meredith to kind of hear from her perspective what the impact of that day was.
So in addition to all the fun and the excitement that you saw from our kids in the video, one of the things that was so important to me was to hear from our faculty and staff. And so we have had a lot of everyone's at various different places in terms of how they understand, positive behavior intervention and supports, and how we can, proactively manage behavior through, movement and class environment and thinking things like that. And so from some folks in the building who had been maybe a little less excited about some of those types of approaches, and maybe a little bit more even perhaps punitive in some of the ways that they thought about, behavior, consequence, those kinds of things. What I heard from some of those folks was just astounding. And so they were so excited, and they thought this could really work, right? Some of these things that he did in this big assembly could really work in these large group situations. And we'd love to see more of Malik, and we'd love, our kids just had an amazing opportunity. Kids who are sharing and mic dropping in front of the entire building were doing those things after they felt comfortable enough in those workshops to stand up in front of the school and really engage in ways that we hadn't seen. And that was really exciting to a lot of our faculty and staff as well. And so we took that feedback and we really started to think about this. This was probably now March or April. And we thought, what's the possible impact if we had this much impact in one day? What's the possible impact if we could do this more regularly, right? If we could make something that was a little bit more consistent for kids so that they understood the routines, less transition time, right? What really could be the impact for kids and our faculty and staff? And so that's where we started to brainstorm and to think about the work that Malik does, in general, as well as what he was able to do at Easterly, and how we might, create an idea to bring to you to think about how we could support our kids. I think the next slide, please. So as you know, Danielle talked a little bit about this in her presentation related to the deans, but we are unique in a lot of ways, and I'm not sharing anything that you don't know, but we have seen even an increase over, this is from the Title I allocations that were just released. I think we just got them a few weeks ago. But we have seen an increase in that percentage of students living in poverty at Easterly Parkway, even from last year. And while we share a lot of similarities with other elementary schools in the district who have, intense and incredible need, it's still a world of difference. And so we really wanted to think about how could we really explicitly teach some skills and to support teachers in doing that. So now I'm going to share with you the stuff that I would rather not, right? But it is really important that you see it. And so it's really important that we have some conversations about some things that went well this year and some things that we still need to work on. When we received the, PSSA test results, and what we saw was that only 5.26 of our African American students met proficiency targets for math. So in addition to the office discipline referrals that I'm going to talk to you about a little bit, and really talk through and think about as we continue our work with, talking about behavior and things and how to support that. This was really important for me to point out too, because this tells me a lot. And it tells me that there's still a lot of work to do to engage students and to give students the support that they need. And this is just one, I thought, really, really big piece of evidence to talk with you about today, about we need to try something new here. So that was one of the pieces. And I'm going to talk with you, if you go to the next slide, I'll talk with you a little bit about referrals. You'll also see this is total numbers of referrals, not kids who were referred, but rather the total number of referrals. But you can see it's really disproportionate, because I do not, in fact, have considerably more students who identify as male at Easterly Parkway than I do who identify as female. So this was not surprising to me. I work with data pretty regularly, and I'm sharing that with my faculty, hopefully quarterly. Sometimes it's on the trimester schedule. So I was watching this through the year and really thinking about, like, what are some ways, like, this concerns me, and so what are some things that we can do? What professional development do we need, and what conversations do we need, right? And what support? Because that would also tell me that, and if you saw some of the slide that Danielle showed earlier that talked about students who were repeatedly, receiving ODRs, all of those students were male at Easterly Parkway. And so that tells me, a lot of information, right? I have a lot of questions now that I think it's time, that my team and I are really excited to dig into and think about. But this was something that, like I said, didn't shock me because I'd been tracking it through the year, but it's definitely something that we want to be thinking about and how to support students a little bit differently. And the next slide talks a little bit about grade level. So you can see here that I had a couple of areas at Easterly Parkway this year who really needed some additional support, right? I think you can see kindergarten and third grade are areas where, kids really struggled with those regulation skills. Kids were having difficulty staying in class and having a difficult time, functioning in a class the way that we might expect typically developing kids to be able to do. And I knew I needed help. I knew that I needed some kind of support for especially those grade levels, but really, like I said, all over the school. So we're thinking about this as a targeted intervention, but also every child in our school will benefit from what Malik's going to talk with you about in terms of how we'll use that. And you can see here that, Black and Hispanic students accounted for 28% of the 47 incidents reported, but they only make up 17.4% of our total school population. And so we really wanted to think about, you can see the specific breakdown at the bottom, I won't read to you, but we recognize that disparity, and we really want to think about what are some things that we can do to help support students. The dean is one of them, right? That's one of the ways that we've been talking about how to support students. And I think the work that Malik is going to present to you a little bit more specifically here is another way to do that. All right, Malik. I think you're muted. Oh, wait.
Excuse me, there I go. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Awesome. So as Meredith was speaking about, we were kind of brainstorming together how we could amplify the impact of this one day and meet some of those needs that she spoke about earlier. We thought about creating a year-long partnership that not only had touch points with the students, but that also worked with educators as well, and working with parents through community engagement events. And being able to create sustainable programming where I'm working with both students and educators at regular intervals throughout the year to make sure that I am not only a consistent presence, but that I can uplift the staff and empower them with some of these creative and play-based best practices to be able to then create a classroom that is more community-centered, that is a place where students feel confident to really grow and to connect. So you can go to the next slide. And so some of the programming that we're thinking about for this next year would be having a kickoff assembly like the one that you saw in the video, but then really amplifying the amount of times that I'm working with the students. So 32 in-person sessions. That would mean that I'm working with the classes, going into classrooms, creating times to be able to work with the same students consistently throughout the year, and then supplementing that in-person programming with virtual sessions. So meeting again with the same groups virtually on the off weeks so that we can make sure that we build that consistent support for the students, and it's not just, hey, I'm here one day, or here one day a month and then I'm out, but that I'm consistently there. And then kind of building in some of this more community focused programming where we have student showcases. So we invite parents, we invite neighbors, friends, extended family to come in and see what the students have been working on throughout the year. So these workshops are really based in songwriting as a way to build that confidence, build those self-regulation skills. And so students will get to showcase their songs that they've written through performances, right? Really working on that part of building confidence in public speaking. knowing that one of the largest, biggest fears around the world is public speaking, right? Getting the students comfortable in doing that. And then also creating a proud moment for parents, like, wow, look at my baby up there going, right? And then as a tangible take home, being able to create an end of the year album that culminates in this listening experience where, again, friends, family, neighbors can come in and really celebrate what the students have worked on and be able to take their recordings, their albums, their songs, original compositions home with them so that they can show their friends. And so each of these classes that I'd be working with throughout the year would have their own album that I produce, that I mix, right, get to sound professional so that they can hear their voice like how they would hear it on Spotify, and have something to really be proud of. Now, for the educators, again, wanting to have that kind of consistent programming, consistent touch bases with them, we've learned through other programming with the district that just having one training at the beginning of the year isn't sufficient for upkeeping and even growing some of the best practices that we introduce to staff, right? So we want to have another touch point in the middle of the year where I can check in on folks and even see, hey, what's been working, what hasn't been working, and create opportunities for honest dialogue so that we can really build real tangible solutions for our educators. They all will get a copy of my activity book with 13 activities to build a culture of creativity and connection with their students. So they'll have their own copy where there's activities that they can reference both in the classroom and on their own as well, to make sure that they are not only growing as an educator, but as a holistic human being, right? There's journaling prompts, things of that nature, so that they have some reflective time to be able to fully integrate the things that they're learning into their own lives. And then the thing that I'm really excited about, which is really unique, is these team building adventures, right? So I get to work with educators outside of the school, whether we go for a hike or whether we have a game night, but to be able to create an environment where we can really connect and get to know each other outside of the school walls, outside of the way our performative ways of being, right? It's like when you show up to work, you might come in as a certain way, but when you're allowed to kind of relax, be with your peers in a more relaxed, informal setting, then you can really share what's on your mind, what's on your heart, and I can kind of guide the conversations to make sure that they are productive, that they're staying on basically the goal, which is being able to be an educator that holds space for your students to really feel more confident and connected in the classroom. We can go to the next slide.
So I'll talk just a little bit about how we're going to see, what are the effects of what we're looking at and what we're hoping to really improve. So we're really looking for improved attendance data, improved student achievement data. I would love to see my incident reporting rates look a little bit more like what my school looks like. And I would love to really help teachers understand, and staff as well, what is like an office discipline referral versus what's more observational that we're collecting for like an MTSS referral. And I'd also love to take a look, I didn't put it on here because I just thought about it today, but I'd really like to look at the rate of referral for those, higher tiers in terms of the MTSS behavioral system as well. I think that's another place where we can look to see what our impact is. We'll also talk with students, right? We want to measure those feelings of connection and belonging before we undertake this, and also for our and then, as we move through, throughout the year. The 35% of the staff at Easterly Parkway, they were new last year, and then today I had 17 interviews. So I'm not done hiring yet for next school year, and so we will see, a significant portion of our staff will be new within the last 3 to 4 years. And so we really want to make sure that new teachers have the support so that we can not just recruit wonderful teachers, but also retain them. And we want to be able to give them the skills and the supports that they need to do that. Okay. All right. What questions do I have?
Sure. Can I ask one quick, when you mention new teachers, when you say how many of them are new, like fresh out of school, like roughly, like is it like half or most or brand new?
At least a third of them.
Okay, that's helpful. Thanks. Go ahead, Dan.
So first, I have a question about in the contract. I know that's an action item later, but since we have everybody here, is now an appropriate time to ask that?
I'm okay with that if you guys feel
with that?
prepared, yeah.
First of all, I love it. Excited for it. Under 2.6 in the contract, use of data, images, and videos for marketing promotional materials. Do we have a system in place to make sure there's a waiver for the parents to sign if they don't want their kids posted on Instagram or anything?
we have the district waiver, so we keep track of all the students who are opted out of any of the photos that we do, photos, releases, things like that. But we would send something specific home because we want to make sure that our families are engaged from day one. So we want to make
Absolutely.
sure that, you know what we're doing, you know why we're doing it, and then you have the option to make sure that it's something that your child wants to participate in.
Perfect. Just wanted to make sure this would be covered with that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to take this opportunity to thank you as a new administrator to actually share and show and own the data is important. There's not many who would brave that in public in front of the board and do that, and to think outside the box to address some of the needs. We're well aware and we're trying to provide as many resources as we possibly can, knowing that you have, as a new administrator and with a number of new teachers in that program, which you can really relate why there's so many new teachers in that school. And dealing with the needs of that school. And it is going to take a strong leader with support to get the changes that we want from that particular school. So thinking outside the box and having Danielle there at your side, who was once an administrator of that school, I thank you. Okay.
I kind of want to add to that because I really do like thinking outside the box, and I like, taking chances and trying something different to see if it's going to work. But I also want to, thank the administrators because you need a supportive team behind you. And you may have all the brilliant ideas of doing things different, but if you don't have a supporting team helping you and encouraging you and supporting you in that, then it goes nowhere. So I also appreciate the fact that the administration is also looking at it, supporting you. So I really like the idea. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, a couple, if there's other questions, or there's a couple of thoughts I just wanted to remark on. I thought it was really interesting, the whole kindergarten, third grade. And I think there's a lot of ways you can do deep dives into some questions about that. But the one that jumped out at me that came first to mind was about our curriculum. Because, third grade is that pivotal year, curriculum-wise, and kindergarten is a really pivotal year. There's so much for kids to absorb, and especially if we're dealing with kids with very socioeconomic impacts and other homelessness and such as that, we know they're probably not particularly necessarily coming from preschool or other things, so they may not have the same skills that some other students are coming in. So that makes it an even bigger wealth that they're trying to learn in kindergarten. So I don't know, I just thought a lot about curriculum when I saw those numbers, is that those are really intense years for those kids, and how do we think about how our pedagogy of providing that curriculum in those years for students that maybe have that different population. It was just interesting to me that was those years. Easterly has a special place in my heart. I have kids that went there, and I know that it is a pretty unique place. So I really appreciate as well how attentive you are to the details and trying to work through how to do it. I think what I like most, Malik, is that your commitment to dealing with the parents and community, because I think we know that, we've talked a lot about with PBIS that we need parents on board as well. And when we're dealing with students in poverty and growing students in poverty, we know those parents are probably working multiple jobs and they have limited availability to really participate. And so engaging parents will be really critical in terms of bringing as many partners on board and helping these students as we can. So I really appreciate that you've included that as part of your plan, because I do think it's really important and pivotal to do that outreach to the community and to parents and caregivers or whoever's involved in that child's life. So that's really great. Those were the only thoughts I wanted to share. Others? Debbie?
I just want to say thanks for the presentation. I think it was Amy and I who had the opportunity to do the tour at Easterly, so we got a little preview of some, and Aaron, sorry. A little preview of some of this, so we got to see some of that video before, and it was really exciting then, and it's exciting now. So I'm very much in support. I want to echo briefly a little bit what Amy just said. I have students who went through elementary a while ago, one of whom mentioned at one point, third grade is when it got like real, Mom. Right? And so the third grade did not surprise me in the least, because there's a shift from school is just fun to, oh, I have to like work a little. So that wasn't even surprising to me as a parent. My question, of course, is about costs. And so I just didn't know if you could share a little bit about the breakdown of costs and who would be paying, because it alluded to that in the memo, but there wasn't specifics.
I can take some of this. We've been working really closely with Jonathan Klingeman to help us because a lot of this can come from Title Family Engagement money, which is increased, as you know, because of the way that title allocations will fall this year. And then my phenomenal PTO has also offered to support up to $5,000 of this work. And so they are really committed to the work that we're doing, and they have been incredibly supportive of any weird thing I've asked them to do, and there are many. And so, you know, this is really a partnership between federal programs and our PTO. You know, in addition to all of the other supports that I could not even consider moving forward with something like this with, I would need to include them as well, because they've been integral.
Thanks.
Peter?
Yeah, well, I just want to like vehemently agree with the things that folks have said, and I think that, you know, thinking as a parent, even thinking back to when I was in school, you know, when I was in third grade 40 years ago, being musical, you know, and probably being a kid that was referred to the office a good amount. I think the concentration here on joy is really wonderful, and that you can sense the purpose behind it. I spent a good amount of time going through videos on the Instagram page today and like laughing in a coffee shop. And like, so I just think about, oh, you know, like I'm just really kind of eager to see what happens, because joy is just so powerful and kind of in high need right now. So I just really appreciate you thinking of that. And Malik, you know, you being committed to that. It's really commendable. Thank you.
It's easy to have joy when you have the best job in the world.
Well, it's pretty, it is pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Aaron?
So, obviously, like, this is a really amazing program. You showed us the video. We saw evidence of it working and everything. My question actually has to do with sustainability, because how much of this program is him? How much of the program is Malik, and how much of the program is stuff that he can teach our teachers to do?
That's a great question, because I would be a poor substitute for Malik and for those kids, just so we're clear. But that's why it was so important for us to think about this two-pronged approach. I mean, just coming in and working with kids would be phenomenal and amazing, but that doesn't feel like sustainable change without, or even sustainable impact without pulling in faculty and staff, right? So we need that, those professional development pieces and even the community building pieces that are built in for faculty and staff, those are critical to any kind of sustainability. You know, I think my PTO would be committed to, you know, continuing to support some form of this. I don't know that they can, you know, kind of financially promise that kind of amount of money every year. But if this is something that is successful and that we feel, you know, is an important and impactful thing for our kids, then we'll look at, you know, alternatives to different kinds of funding sources, you know, what's out there, because I'm sure we've only scratched the surface in terms of what really is available for work like this. Our hope right now, though, is to use those faculty and staff professional development pieces to really embed these practices into what we do with students every day. And that's the piece that, you know, I think Malik is incredibly important to this. That is not, you know, I will not, I laugh a little bit when you say that, because he is critical. And I do think that once we get people excited, once we get people the training and the resources that they need, this is something that our teachers and staff are going to want to do, right? At least based on the feedback and what they shared. I think, and even today when I sent the email out saying like, hey, watch me on the board meeting, it's going to be cool. The response I got was, this is so exciting. This is so exciting. Please let us know what you need. So we're really excited to have our faculty and staff excited too.
It is exciting.
I also want to add something in there as well. I I love that question because that was really on our minds and on our hearts as we were thinking about programming. And so for me, as the kind of lead facilitator in this program, one of the things that I requested of Meredith that was a non-negotiable is that there be full-time teachers, faculty, deans in the classroom sessions with me, so that on top of doing the structured trainings and these team building adventures that we have, they actually get opportunities to see the work in action while I'm facilitating with the students as kind of an added bonus opportunity to get a training, right? And then afterwards, time permits, even just walking through the halls with them, we get to debrief and we get to talk about, hey, what were some of the things that you saw there that worked? What didn't work? What would you want to try, right? So I absolutely need, both for accountability and safety, a regular staff there with me in those in-person sessions, but also for that added kind of training to make sure that this programming and these best practices are sustainable when I'm not there. So that's kind of the way that we were thinking about it.
Which is a great
Thank you all.
question. Actually, I was going to ask you, Malik, if I can. Do you have examples of districts that you've worked with that you are no longer working with where the change has continued?
Yeah, that's a great question. So SEL hip hop in itself is fairly new, right? So this is definitely a pilot program. However, I've been working in this sort of role with other folks. So in Lawrenceville, here in New Jersey, there's a district that I work with where two of the schools had lowered rates of incident reporting by 30% with some of these practices that are based in the programming here that we're doing.
Okay, so my only, and I don't even like to use this word because I think this is a great idea and I think it's entirely necessary. I think this is what PBIS misses, frankly. Like, I think PBIS is great, it's not enough. My question, however, is we're already potentially adding a dean of students to this school and not other schools. So we may be pursuing, and I think this is a great program, and I think there is definitely necessity, there is need within Easterly. Are we thinking of putting this or something else in those other schools, like the 4 schools that don't get deans? Because I think they have the same need.
So Carlene asked the question. We first met Malik when we brought Playworks in. Just so you know, he was employed by Playworks at the time and was inspiring from the beginning. And as you know, we came back with Playworks. We're still partnering with them. So much of what he did teach did transfer over from that aspect. In the case of Easterly, and we look at equity, they by far have the most marginalized population of intersectionality, of race, language, poverty. So in some cases, we have to put more supports there. Again, the reason for the dean, it is when we're looking at the students. When Carlene asked that question, we want to do the research this year. So Title I funding, whether it's fair or not, because of the poverty, they generate 3 times the money than some of our other schools. So when we're finding a way to fund this, as we've talked, we don't have an unlimited budget, or I would, we could talk. She has the funding this year, whereas other schools do not. If they're not a title school, we do provide them with a title-like teacher that's paid out of our budget, but it's just not yielded. So this kind of started last year when we reached back out and said he was offering some things and the PTOs picked it up. I would really encourage the PTOs again this year. He still offers assemblies. We'll be sharing with the principals. Meredith already had. Come take a look. Come see what we're doing to begin to put our minds together of, if this is this impactful and we begin to see the data, what can we do in next year, or what can we even do the second half of the year with our PTO or with funding that we do have to begin to support some of the schools?
I can also share that we have a schedule built out that's tentative for right now as we're working through dates. And so one of the things that I've shared with my administrative team is not only invitations to all of those school-wide performances, assemblies, and the professional development pieces, but also what dates he's going to be in town, so that if it makes sense and you're able to, your PTO is interested, or you've got, money that you're interested in putting here, that we can work out a partnership with Malik to make sure that any school who is interested and willing to kind of work with his schedule, we can share some of those costs then, those travel costs that can be prohibitive. And that was something that Malik was really willing to do, that once, I've already started talking to our administrative team about it, but once we finalize some dates, we'll see if that's something that, can be secured for any school that's interested in doing it.
Okay.
So I think to the longevity question that Aaron asked, I think the question goes back to how you started the conversation, Meredith, was that it was about impacting culture. So that, it seems you're facing a culture issue as a big part of this, not necessarily all of it. There's factors you can't control like poverty, but I can see where this level of engagement might not be necessary, hoping that you'll retain a lot of those teachers. Then, once you create a baseline of belonging and culture, then it becomes more sustainable with less effort, hopefully. The one thing, though, Malik, I think would be interesting, and this is not something to answer necessarily now, but later, can you eventually share, what are the skills teachers will get, say, if they're not a hip hop person? How can they implement some of these same, what are the baseline things that you're going to be teaching them? What is the skill that they're going to walk away with, even if they're not using specifically your type of music, or can they use some other art form? That would be interesting to learn later when you share more later, but not for tonight. Any other questions from board members? Gretchen?
I don't have a question. I just wanted to thank Meredith for basically ditto what Mr. Johnson said. You're so brave, and I personally, and I think a lot of board members here, have nothing but respect, so much respect for just being vulnerable and showing the data is what the data is. And I hope that, other people hear about this, that being, really, really transparent about something that maybe is not a plus, we can put it at that, does nothing but good, because if we hide it or don't talk about it or avoid it, we can't make it better. And so I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. And then also for your creativity with, something like this. This is really cool. That's it. Thanks.
Great. One thing that in my education class that they stress all the time is that teachers need to take risk. And it's so important because that's how you also grow, and that we should learn to trust our students. So thank you for that. You're doing both.
Good. Anybody else? Well, thanks. This was great. Thanks for joining us, Malik. We really appreciate your time.
Oh, thank you so much. It's an honor to be with y'all. And hopefully I get to meet some of you in person this fall.
Very cool. Yes, you'll have to invite us to one of the school-wide events. We would love to come.
Absolutely.
All right. So our last item for Culture, Climate, and Learning is going to be annual data reports schedule. And we have Chris Merritt and Danielle's going to continue to join us, and Dr. Bucher to go over our month-to-month plan.
Thank you. About 3 years ago, I think it was, we put together a schedule, a calendar for CCL. These aren't really new things, but so that everyone could kind of see the things that fall in each month, so we don't have a logjam of a whole bunch of reports at once. Some of this is due to the availability of the reports and when we get the data. So this is our anticipated schedule for 24-25. And we're hoping that, again, that based on the dates that we know right now, that this looks like a pretty viable report. This is certainly not all the reports that you'll get in CCL. These are just the major things that we know of. Like today, CCL was very, very encompassing of many other things. So, but these are just the data reports that we have a schedule for. Questions?
Yeah, in looking over this, because I did see it before, I just noticed that, there's some things that 2024, that 23-24 that we're not doing 2025, like CTC updates. And is there a reason why we left some of those out?
No, I think Go ahead.
Yeah, I think with the CTC, so we were picking up with our directors. We do a board work session, so I don't know if you, like last year, we shared that part of the director's goals that we share at those work sessions, Ben should be part of those, so he will be sharing those updates, but as part of the board work session when the other directors share their priority goals.
Okay.
Are there others?
Other
The
questions?
PACE survey is every other year, so, but we put the 23-24 and 24-25 so you can kind of see the differences between last year and this year.
Okay, kind of straightforward. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, I know we have a lot of people eager to join, but I think we'll give everybody a quick 5-minute restroom break, and then we'll get back to finance and finance committee. We're Everybody ready? Okay. I'd like to reconvene the meeting, and we're going to move on to a Finance Committee update from the state budget.
Correct. So as you're aware, the state budget was passed after the district budget was approved by you, and so I asked Mr. Vigilione to put together some data, and he's going to give you a brief update.
A lot of good news this year is coming out of the state budget. The budget was signed a couple months before it was a year before. As you look at the summary on page 1, there's approximately $1 billion additional in the state budget, including $100 million for cyber charter transition reimbursements to be paid back to districts for cyber charter school tuition. The district impact is an increase of $1.6 million approximately, which administration is recommending that the additional state funding be committed to the Capital Reserve Fund in the fiscal year 2024-2025. Now, like any good accountant, I can rain on any parade, and just showing you this, $1.6 million is less than 1% of our revenue. Included in that $1.6 million is $600,000 worth of hold harmless relief supplement funds, which is only in the 24-25 budget and is not guaranteed beyond that. So when you're talking about a $1.6 million increase, netting it in the future to $1 million, you're talking about a 0.5% increase in the budgeted revenues. So there's a rating on the parade, but again, it is still 1.6 million additional that we had over the previous year. So with that, I'll entertain any questions.
Okay, yeah, Jackie.
So I just want to make sure I'm interpreting this correctly, that this chart includes the cyber charter transition dollars that are going to be paid out to the district from the state, but it doesn't include any savings that we'll have on changes to the way cyber charter tuition is calculated that were pushed through the budget this year. So there could be some additional savings there as well.
Could be, correct.
Okay, thank you.
That was primarily the special ed funding you're talking about, or is there other aspects as well?
From what I the special ed funding was most
Yeah,
of
it was tiered as opposed to straight flat fee. Yeah. Okay. I just wasn't sure if there's additional stuff.
I believe the change was that the calculation assumes that 16% of your population is identified as special ed, and they have changed that so that it can reflect the actual population within your district.
Okay.
I got a nod from Randy. Okay. Thank you.
Sounds good.
Because we have above 16%, so
Right.
that's always been
one of the reasons.
difficult for us. Yes.
Yep. Makes sense. Other questions? Debbie?
Given what Joe said about 600,000-ish not being guaranteed to go beyond, does that mean when we start budgeting for the next year,
We'll take the lower number.
we'll take the lower number and assume that it doesn't continue, and then that'll be a bonus if it does?
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Other questions? Well, we're grateful that the budget came in earlier than the last time, even though it wasn't still on time. So, thanks very much.
Thank you.
All right, so that's all we have for Finance Committee. Our last topic for Committee of the Whole is Policy Committee, and we have one very large policy to look at about attendance. So I know we have several staff members joining us to kind of go over that and talk about what came out of the Policy Development Committee recently. So I appreciate your patience tonight, ladies, in waiting. I know we had a lot to talk about earlier.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to start by thanking everyone who's joining us tonight. We brought the experts with us in our attendance world. Since this is a very lengthy policy, 10 pages, as I'm sure you've seen, we spent a lot of time going over it. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, then I'll go ahead and give a little brief overview about what we talked about, and then we're here for questions. So go ahead.
I'm Cindy Sargent. I'm the home and school visitor.
Susan Bailey, data manager.
Stephanie Beaver, Director of Student Services.
Okay, so thank you all. As you saw at the top of the policy, there were heavy revisions suggested by PSBA, so it did take us quite some time to get through the 10 pages of this particular policy. And as we did that, the Policy Development Committee was integral, as always, in suggestions for clarification changes. We did some editorial suggestions, some sequencing of definitions, and so forth. One of the biggest things you will notice is that our current policy allows for a maximum of 10 cumulative lawful absences verified by parental notification during one school year. And then it also allows for up to 2 weeks for participation in educational tour or a trip not sponsored by the district. As you will see in the suggested revision, that is being blocked into a 17-day total absences. So it's not going to be separated out anymore from 10 days for parental permission. It's going to be all 17 days are going to be for parental permission as seen fit. And you can see the list on the policy of the different qualifications for that, along with the other suggestions that we had. But that was the biggest difference, I think, you'll see. And everything else was in line with what PSBA said, and then the experts that helped us work on that. We also are working on an AR to go along with that, and we have it, I think you have it almost finished, and we'll have that to present as well.
Michelle, do you want to explain why 17, that is part of, right? Because once we go beyond that, that's when, is it when PDE just starts to determine his child is truant?
Yes, you're correct. So the 17 comes from, typically there's 177 days in the school year that students need to attend. 10% is 17 days. Once you're over that 10%, or what the state calls 90% attendance, these students, no matter what their excuse, unexcused or excused, are considered chronic absent. That is what you see on the PA Future Ready Index.
Right, so we had talked about that quite a bit at the committee, so I just wanted other board members who weren't here to understand kind of where that number is generated from. It's kind of an odd number, so it's for a specific reason. Other questions that board members may have? And I know we're going to also make sure to communicate some of these changes out to parents as we roll out the new school year once we have those administrative regs ready.
That's correct. And then they will be brought forward at the next voting, for voting.
Great. Jackie, you seem like you were stewing on a question. I don't want to rush and miss you.
Just so you know, we'll be sharing this information with our A team Wednesday. So they will have this information, and then we'll be able to communicate it out upon board approval before school starts.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure. Yeah, we did a lot of math in committee, and we went back and forth about a lot of things, but I think in the end, everybody felt pretty confident we had ironed all that out for the most part. But certainly if anybody noted anything that wasn't at the committee meeting, please speak up. No?
Other questions? Okay, if you think of anything, please feel free to reach out. Thank you.
Thanks for all your hard work. I know it took a lot of time from all of you, and it's really great that we're going to be confident that we're meeting all the right guidelines. So thanks so much for all your hard work.
Thank you.
Just realize this streamlines the whole process for parents. So I think they'll be.
It's more simplified, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, and with our move to Power School, our hope is that notification about absences is going to be more consistent, more regular, and that will make it a lot easier for parents to track and know how, where their student is in terms of excused and unexcused absences. So we're looking forward to having that new resource. So, all right. Well, that concludes Committee of the Whole portion of the agenda. We now have additional time for public comment. Is there anyone in person who'd like to make public comment or joining us remotely? All right, then we'll move on to the consent agenda. We have several items which will be addressed in a single motion for approval. However, to simplify questions and discussion, we'll proceed through each category. So as I identify each group, if you have a question, please raise your hand, board members, and let me know. So we have approval of minutes. I think we had a brief change that was sent to the board secretary that was adjusted. Are there any other issues about the minutes anyone noted? Okay. Moving on to consent agenda for finance and personnel, we have a number of routine contracts in here. We have some new agreements with Jostens, which a big change will be, we're changing vendors for our cap and gown supplies, so that'll be a new thing that parents will want to be aware of, assuming it's approved this evening. Some infant stimulators for the preschool program, that'll be really interesting. So, any questions about any of these items? Okay, Gretchen?
So I only did this one other time, so I'm trying to remember if this is the right protocol. So if I have a question about our human resource recommendations, do I ask to pull that out, or do I ask it now?
If you just have a question, we can answer it, and then if you have a concern that you want it voted on separately, then you can ask for it pulled out, or you can ask for it pulled out immediately.
I'm not
It's just
requesting.
if it's just a question, then you can just ask it.
It's just a question. Yeah, I'm not requesting it be voted on separately. Okay.
So,
but other people had ones. Should I wait or?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Well, no, just, I noticed under human resource recommendations that at the end of it, there is a letter stating the reasoning why an additional football coach has been requested. And it's because the number of students has increased who are playing football. And I had just finished reading the action plan for the athletics equity plan. And so that was where my lens was at that time. And it made me realize that I have always heard that football has no cuts and other sports do. And since we're increasing the number of coaches because there's more students, but there's no cuts in that sport, whereas other sports there are cuts, and so there wouldn't be a need for, it just got me thinking that since we're talking about equity athletics, is that something that, popped up into other people's minds, or is this just something that we do in this district? I just, it made me curious.
Made me curious too. And you could tell me if I'm wrong or not. But isn't whether they cut or don't cut dependent on the coach, Chris? Yeah, whichever you prefer, if it's quick or whatever.
Glad you're here.
Thank you. Traditionally, we've tried to make sure that in every sports season there is a sport that does not make cuts. So if a child wants to participate in a sports season, there is a sport that doesn't make cuts. In the fall, it is football and cross country. In the winter, it's indoor track and field. In the spring, it is track and field. So the important thing about, as you look at the dynamics of that, is cross country is a very unique sport as far as the physical demands for that sport. A 5'7", 125-pound athlete has a place in cross country, but a 6'8", 325-pound athlete doesn't. So that's why we've always supported both football and cross country not being a cut sport.
But Chris, do we have cross country at the middle level?
Not in middle school, no.
Because this is for a middle school football
Right.
coach.
Right. So that is correct.
I'm just sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just was like, wait, my brain is stuck.
No. Indoor track and field, outdoor track and field, that's an array of body types and different types of, so there's a place for everyone, for sure. We do not have middle school cross country, but if we did, there wouldn't be cuts in that area as well, if that makes sense.
So what do we have in the middle school? I'm assuming this would be your question, Gretchen. And Debbie. So what do we have in the middle school that's no cuts that would apply to girls?
We don't. We have field hockey, middle school in the spring, but not in the fall.
But doesn't have cuts.
They haven't made cuts recently based on the enrollment. We are looking to, again, monitor their enrollment as well. So to your point, in the fall, we have middle school soccer, and that traditionally hasn't made cuts in the girls' sports.
Okay.
We have middle school volleyball, girls volleyball. for middle school female sports. So
Which is winter.
to your point, middle school girls soccer hasn't made cuts.
Do you have further questions?
I mean, middle school boys soccer also hasn't made cuts, right? So it still is different with boys and girls.
The middle school boys
There's two
teams,
sports for boys and one for girls.
based on enrollment, that is correct. That is correct.
Go ahead.
I'm not trying to pick on football, but I want to push back just a little bit on the justification you just made. Because what I heard was there's no space on the cross-country team for a 6-foot, 325-pound, I'm assuming male. And they could then play on the football team. Is a 6-foot, 300-pound female welcome on the football team if she wanted to play?
Absolutely.
And do we
we've
have a
had-
no-cut?
We've had females on the
there's no
football
cut
team
for
years.
anybody.
And
Okay.
there's still there's female on our football team currently.
Okay.
Yes.
I just,
Yeah.
the justification sounded a little,
Thank you for the clarification.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, because if we're going to have a no-cut sport, let's face it, some of our participants in football do not have a traditional football build per se, but they still want to be there and they want to participate and they're kept safe, but they get the experience to participate in that program as is appropriate. I think we've talked a little bit about tracking. I know there's a lot of efforts that you are making, Chris, in the AD's office about our middle school programs and how do we grow them and how do we also implement stuff for 6th grade. As for community members that aren't aware, PIAA only starts at 7th grade, so it's hard to cultivate students' interest when we don't have the capabilities or necessarily to offer for 6th graders all the same things that we do offer for 7th grade. So I do think it's important to continue to track those soccer and field hockey numbers, and I know we're doing, doing that because we're trying to make sure that we're meeting all girls' needs. And I know with our new wrestling program, we may start to see some interest maybe perhaps at the middle level. And I think, so we'll be following that, see if we have opportunities there. Okay. Other questions?
I do, not
Sure.
on this.
Okay.
Randy and Joe, I have a question on A.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
The last paragraph was confusing to me. I'm not sure what it was trying to say, and maybe it's just my misunderstanding of it. It seems like it says that the NW Financial Group did complete the rebate calculations, but then they did not complete the rebate calculation, and therefore they referred to ARC. So I'm not sure what is that is saying.
It's saying what you said, is that NW had done them before we used ARC, but we believe that their expertise was not as valued and we should use ARC instead.
I see, so it's like they started it or,
Right.
all right, is there a reason why we,
I think just to make sure that there's no conflict of interest,
okay,
because they also represent us for other purposes of the bond investments and the bond issuances, that we felt we needed to get a third party.
okay, did we pay them?
Yes, this is it was not included. Did we pay NW or are we paying?
NW, because, okay, they just did that, and then we realized that we probably need a,
Correct.
okay,
Separate,
thank you.
yes, yes. And just for clarity, this would have a $2,500 fee attached to this.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions of finance and personnel? Deb?
Thanks. I had the same question as Carleen, so thank you, Carleen. That takes care of one of mine. I also just wanted to kind of reiterate what Amy already said about item I, the service agreement for graduation supplies. This will change the cap and gown. So parents who have been saving an older cap and gown from their previous graduate will not be able to use that because we don't necessarily expect the color to match. That said, the new vendor is supposed to be cheaper, So it shouldn't be as much, right? And I do believe that the district is going to have some cap and gown sets, and if it's a financial hardship for a family, they should absolutely reach out, and we'll find a way to help your graduate get a cap and gown.
And that's true every year.
That's true every year, but I'm just reminding in particular because I know there's a lot of reused gowns in particular out there. I have several. How I ended up with several, I'm not sure, but I have several in my house.
I have one in my closet, yep.
So anyway, I just wanted to reiterate that because I think it's important for families to know, and I know the high school will push that information out.
They will.
Thanks.
Yep.
But it's not a totally different color, right?
No,
I assume not,
It's
but
a different shade. We don't know. It could be totally the same color. We do not know. Don't get rid of them yet.
I don't, knowing
But knowing
dye lots
two
and
different-
fabric
yeah.
and yeah, chances are they might be really close. Hard to say. Anything else?
I do.
Okay.
I'm
What else
sorry.
from, that's okay, from finance and personnel?
Yeah, I have a question on G.
Okay.
And it seems like the software and the consultant together, if I'm reading it correctly, is going to not exceed $10,000. Is it both for both of them, or is it just the software? Because that was a little confusing to me. After reading it over, I think they're trying to say it's both of them together, and I wasn't sure why the amount was put together like that. Like, I would like to know what the consultant fee was, if it was available.
Is this the James Daniel? Because the last paragraph I'm looking at says not to exceed cost of 10,000.
Right, is it for both the consultant and the software?
Yes, they're working with 3 programs a year, and this goes along with the 339 audit
Okay,
that we
yeah.
received.
Right.
One of the years, they're going to have to do 4 programs because we have a total of 11. And so they're hoping to get the 4 in this year. That's why it's a little higher, or that's why it's that amount. If they could not do 4 last year. They tried, they just couldn't get the 4th in.
Okay, but the price, it's the software, from what I'm gathering, right?
It's, the consultant also works with the teachers.
Right.
So it's both. It's the program that he's buying plus the support from the consultant.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm here for Ben. He's on
No, that's
vacation.
fine.
And I talked to him about this particular item.
Yeah, at first I wasn't sure if it was just the software, and I didn't know how much we were paying the consultant. And then after reading it a couple of times, I realized that it's for both. And I was just wondering, is it separated? Because we should know how much the software costs. And I wasn't sure.
It's both.
Is what?
It's both.
It's both, yeah, it's
together.
both.
So
Together.
he's getting the software, and then we're also doing the consulting, so it's
Correct.
together.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Other items? Okay, then we can move on to instructional programs. There's out-of-state travel. Okay, Aaron?
I just have one question. Can we change the departure date for the State College Area High School music trip to 2025? I don't really want to send them on a trip for a whole year.
Yep.
I was really excited.
To go to Rome for a whole year, that would be pretty good.
Well, we'll do that.
Thanks for catching that. I knew you were like on the buzzer. You were so ready. Okay. All right, so that covers instructional programs. Anything from physical plant, we have routine service contracts in there. Questions for Mr. Fisher? You're in the clear, Mike. Anything, okay, so that's our last section. And so with that, I'd like to call for a motion to approve the consent agenda items 10 through 13 as presented.
So moved.
Colby, second.
Okay, that's been moved by Anderson, Colby second. Any last questions or discussion? All right, any public comment on the consent agenda? That looks like a no. Board members in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously, and we'll move on to action items. First up, we have a motion to approve memorandum of understanding with AFSCME, then shown in attachment 14A. Pardon me.
So moved, Huff.
Buck, second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Any questions or discussion on this item? Any public comment? No? All right. Board members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? All right, that item is passed. our final action item is agenda item 14B, a motion to approve an agreement with Gene Knaus for restorative practice training and consulting, as shown in attachment 14B.
So move, Quebecor.
Second half.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Questions or discussion on this item? Yeah, Dan.
Just curious how we're determining who's going to go through the training. I know that's probably up to,
Administration.
yeah, but is there a method to,
Chris is, yeah, oh, she beat you. Thanks, Chris.
So part of our two-year induction plan is that all of our new employees will go through restorative practices training. So our goal was to have 100% of our employees trained. So we will continue that and just need her help a little bit to get that training in.
That's helpful, thanks.
We have some trainers in-house too. So we're not contracting it all out.
Great.
Okay, other questions? Any public comment on this item? All right, board members in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right, that item is passed. That concludes our agenda for this evening. We're looking ahead to future meetings. We have Monday, August 19th. We'll have a regular board meeting here in the Panorama Village Administration Center in the boardroom at 7 p.m. Also, Tuesday, August 27th, we'll have Policy Development Committee, again here in Panorama Village in the boardroom at 3 p.m. I'd like to now adjourn the meeting of the State College Area School District Board of Directors. Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening.